Hey, diverse book lovers, welcome to this month's episode of Getting Lit, a monthly podcast dedicated to highlighting the diverse lit coming out for the month. Today, we're going to be talking about all the books coming out in July that you should add to your list. My name is Lala, and you can find me on Instagram at ThisBlackGirlReads. And on today's show, we'll discuss a book about finding true love with the help of an app, a historical fiction that brings to life a forgotten shero, a magical realism tale that takes us to Vietnam, an essay collection that looks at race, class, and gender, a book about Canadian Blackness and what it means, and a multicultural retelling of Pride and Prejudice. So sit back, relax, and let's get lit. So before we get started today, I want to give a huge shout out to East End Arts for featuring me in your July issue. I'm just totally honored. And if you want to check it out, I'll leave the link in the show notes. It was such a beautiful feature, and I'm so thankful. So thank you once again. And I'll be leading an anti-racist book club with them starting in September. So please look out for the info on that. So thank you once again, and I'll leave the link in the show notes if you want to check it out. So now let's get lit. So the first book we're going to be talking about today is Have We Met by Camille Baker. So I received this book and I couldn't wait to read it, and I ended up completing it in less than 24 hours. So the book follows Corinne, aka Corey, who's kind of trying to get back on her feet after suffering the loss of her best friend to cancer. So she has moved from Texas to Chicago in an attempt to be closer to her friend. And Corey is kind of at like this crossroads in her life. She starts hanging out with her cousin Tawanda and her cousin's friends. Meanwhile, she's just really unsure of her career path. So cousin Tawanda's crew consists of Elise, Cortland, and the other Corey and Brian. So Elise is another woman in the crew that's kind of undergoing big career change. Cortland is the other Corey in the group, and Brian is the ex of the other Corey. So during their initial meetup, when the first Corey meets all the other girls or the crew, during their initial meetup with these new friends, Corey drops her phone in a puddle accidentally. So when she extracts the phone from Rice the next morning, it boots up and it has like this new app on her home screen. So the app is called Met, and the app is very much the premise of the entire story. So Met appears to be this sort of revolutionary sort of dating app. And through a series of like catchy statements, the app informs Corey that she has already met her soulmate, and she is informed that she will bump into 4 people from her past. And it's up to her to determine which one is her actual true soulmate. So what we do is we follow her along this journey. It shows her kind of navigating through these new friendships that she's making and bumping into people she's already met in the past. And what we see is just like a beautiful love connection as well. So I recommend this for someone who is wanting like a really nice, feel-good kind of book, a nice, easy, laid-back summer read. It gave me all the feels, and I really like this one. It's super cute. So this one is called Have We Met by Camille Baker, and it comes out on July 1st. Next up, we have Island Queen by Vanessa Riley. So if you know me, you know that I definitely have a thing for historical fiction. And Vanessa Riley really outdid herself with the research and thought that went into this book. So this one is an epic story based on the real life of Dorothy Curran Thomas, who is a woman born into slavery and who is able to buy her freedom and that of her family. So we start out in about 1761 when Irish planters kind of dominate the plantation life in Montserrat. So Dorothy is 5 and she is the daughter of an English planter and a slave mother. So as she grows older, she faces kind of like extraordinary personal challenges that eventually force her to flee Montserrat or be killed by her half brother. What follows is such a powerful journey. By 1824, Dorothy is a wealthy businesswoman known throughout the Caribbean colonies, but her existence is threatened once again by the actions of white colonists against free women of color. So what she has to do is she travels to London to talk to the commanding officer of the colonies herself to kind of plead her case. So the reason I love this book so much is because of Dorothy. Dorothy is such an inspiring and intriguing character. Her number one goal in the book is to be kind of financially independent. After fleeing Montserrat, it took her about 16 years to earn the fees for herself and her sister and her mother and her first two daughters to buy their freedom. Once she achieved this, she was determined to secure her family's wealth, and over the years ensured her daughters were educated and had marriage contracts that protected their wealth. What I loved the most is that she didn't tolerate no shit from no man, black or white, lover or business associate. She just was really determined to make her own way and to really not take no shit from no one. And I really love that about her character, especially since she was like in the 1800s, 1820s. So it was much, much more difficult for her at that time. And I appreciated that so much. Her pride and her sharp tongue were definitely legendary, but she was also human. So Riley does spend a considerable amount of time detailing her many lovers who fathered her children. And I'm just so thrilled that Riley decided to bring this woman's story to life. I just totally loved it. It was such an intense and a beautiful read. And so this one is called Island Queen by Vanessa Riley, and it comes out on July 6th. Next up, we have Build Your House Around My Body by Violet Coopersmith. Intricate, detailed, and innovative. Those are the words that I'd use to describe this beautiful debut. The timeline jumps around a lot in this one, and there are a lot of characters to remember, but the way that they're introduced to us allow us to see a character's younger self and their future self without really knowing that it's their younger self, which I thought was like pretty clever. So the book takes place in Vietnam, shifting between a cast of interconnected characters and moving from the 1940s to early 2011. It's framed around the present day disappearance, and it weaves together kind of supernatural Vietnamese stories. So in 1986, a daughter of a wealthy Vietnamese family gets lost in an abandoned rubber plantation as she flees from her father, and the incident kind of changes her life forever. So 25 years later, Winnie, who is an American Vietnamese, decides to move to Vietnam to live with her aunt and teach English. So Winnie feels like her life is kind of at a dead end with a job that she doesn't really like because she doesn't really like teaching English in Saigon. She has no friends, no real family, or significant other in sight, and she's really just lonely, and she just feels depleted. So when she goes missing, connections past and present emerge, pulling significant details into focus of how it happened, and her disappearance might even be a blessing. So estranged families, unreciprocated love, and the relentless battle of womanhood. This story unfolds layers of biting and illuminating histories. So that's what I really loved about it. It did kind of seem over the place sometimes, but in the end, everything came together, and that's what I loved so much about this book. I will admit that this is not for everyone, but if you stick with this book, I'm telling you, it is a huge payoff. So if you like feminist tales or horror or magical realism, then this is definitely the book for you. I really liked it. This one is called Build Your House Around My Body by Violet Coopersmith, and it comes out on July 6th. So the next book we have on our list today is Don't Let It Get You Down, Essays on Race, Gender, and the Body by Savala Nolan. So this book was so good. I feel like I could go on and on about each essay in this collection because each of them kind of held their own weight, and each of them were very specific. Okay, so this one is a collection of essays that are part kind of memoir and part social commentary. So Nolan herself is the daughter of a white mother and a Black and Mexican father. And in this collection, we see how she navigates her adolescence, college, and law school years, and later on a career as an attorney and writer. And we see this all from the lens of being not sure where she fits in. So research into Nolan's family and her experience growing up with them is shaped by two really polar opposite worlds. Her mom's family are former slave holders, and her father has served time in prison and is kind of living on survival mode. So this collection has such gorgeous prose, and she writes so candidly about internal and external oppression, colonialism, anti-Blackness, fat phobia, and the patriarchy, and all through the lens of being a woman of color in America. Her thoughts and ideas are very, very bold, and each essay kind of stops you in your tracks, making you think and reflect. I can't recommend this one enough. I really, really enjoyed it. It is such deep commentary, and I really, really love this one. So this one was called Don't Let It Get You Down, Essays on Race, Gender, and Body by Savala Nolan, and it comes out on July 13th. So next we have one of the cutest books that I truly, truly liked. This one is called Incense and Sensibility by Sonali Dev. So from the first page of this book, I was hooked. Incense and Sensibility is an emotion-packed, angsty, swoony romance that gave me all the feels. But I will say that this book is a sequel, which I didn't know when I first started it, and I received it, and I was like a little bit confused when I was reading through it. But I eventually got caught up, and it was okay. And I found this also happened to me when I read The Secret Keeper of Jaipur. That was also a sequel, and I didn't know. And I felt like small details and small like little stories that I didn't really understand because I didn't read the first one. So I would say, like, if you can read the first one, read the first ones. But if not, I still got through it. It was still such a beautiful story, and it was still worth it. So anyways, let's get to the book. So as I said, this one is called Incense and Sensibility, and it's a spin-off of Sense and Sensibility, one of Jane Austen's novels, if you don't know. So we jump into the life and times of the Rajay family with the story of Yash. From my understanding, previous books have focused on his siblings, so finally we get to read his story. So as the book opens up, Yash is running a competitive race for governor of California, and his chances look pretty good. He's a man that's devoted to public service, who truly believes that he's called to make life better for those who are suffering. While he's popular with many voters, Yash also encounters the racism due to his skin color and ethnicity. An attempted shooting at a rally leaves Yash slightly wounded, and he puts his friend and bodyguard, Abdul, into a coma, and he's not expected to wake up from it. So suddenly Yash's world is turned upside down, and he feels tremendous guilt about Abdul's sacrifice, and he's overwhelmed by anxiety attacks when he attempts to go on stage at his next rally. With only 3 months left of campaigning before the election, he can't afford to show any type of vulnerability, and he is forced to seek some type of help. So he reaches out to India Dashwood, a stress management coach and yoga instructor, and from there kind of romance ensues. So India is lovely, but she sort of carries the weight of her family. She lives with her mother, Tara, and her highly emotional sister China in the apartment above their yoga studio. So they're not well off by any means. They're done kind of just getting by until Tyra falls and India realizes they may not be able to cover her necessary medical treatments. And her sister mixed up in a relationship that doesn't seem to be too good for her. So when Yash re-enters India's life, it's 10 years after they've spent a magical romance night together in which they fell in love. but then they parted and never reunited until he comes in to help with his stress and anxiety. So India has never quite recovered from losing him, and as she begins to help him with his healing, their feelings for each other begin to resurface. So this book is a beautiful love story, but I also truly love how the author doesn't shy away from talking about some of the real pain and trauma and truly digging deep into both of these characters. I really truly appreciated that, because it wasn't only about their love, it was more about them as individuals and how they overcome some of the obstacles in their life, and I appreciated that. So this one is called Incense and Sensibility by Sonali Dev, and it comes out on July 6th. So the last book on our list today is Black Like Who by Ronaldo Walcott. So Ronaldo Walcott's groundbreaking study of Black culture in Canada, Black Like Who, caused an uproar upon its original publication in 1997. So this is the new anniversary audio version, and it's perfect for everyone to grasp at their own pace and really look at some of the issues that continue to define Black life in Canada. I know that this might not be for everyone because the writing is super, super academic. But I think that if you can get past that, there's so much value in his words and so much to love about these essays. So this is a collection of essays focusing on aspects of Black culture in Canada, and it attempts to kind of articulate some of the ways of thinking about Canadian Blackness. So many times as Blacks in Canada, we often have to read stories and studies from an American lens, and Walcott's study was one of the first that truly gave Black Canadians their own voice. So Walcott's book not only assesses the role of Black Canadians in defining Canada, but I love the way in which he urges us to define Canadian Blackness separate from the US and the Caribbean. Because in reality, there are so many differences and a different culture altogether. So most of all, Walcott raises important questions about belonging, diaspora, policing, and overt racism and bias. I think good reason that this book has stood the test of time, and if you care anything about the study of Blacks, the diaspora, or anti-Blackness from a Canadian lens, then you should definitely add this one to your list for sure. So this one is called Black Like Who by Ronaldo Walcott, and it comes out on July 15th. So we made it through the show. So many great books coming out in July, so many that you should probably add to your list. And that is it for our show today. Thank you so much for getting lit with me today. I am Lala, and you can find me on Instagram at This Black Girl Reads. And don't forget to jump over to Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or Spotify, or Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts, and hit that subscribe button. And don't forget to leave a rating and review to get the podcast in front of more eyes. It is so much appreciated. And I would love to know what you guys are reading next. And if you picked up any of these books, if you add them to your list, let me know. Thank you so much for getting lit with me today. Remember, if you're reading what everyone else is reading, then you'll probably think the way everyone else is thinking.